Well, Fred, here we are,
All right, Stephen. Yeah,
spending a Friday
nice
night.
to meet you again.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah,
For sure, you're looking well.
and you. I do follow you on my
Socials.
computer, Facebook, and
Yeah.
things like that. I do read up on you.
It's been a
Yeah,
long time, no see.
yeah, and I'm really quite proud that I'm thinking, oh, he's really doing well.
Well,
And I had a small hand in it.
yes, you certainly did. A
Yeah,
rather large hand, actually.
yeah.
I was just trying to think the other day, when did we first meet? You were working for Garlic Midwest, the
I
courier
was working
company.
for Garlic Midwest, a courier company, and we started shifting stuff at the company. Um,
I
and I don't know, I just seem to just gel with you.
Yeah, we always got on really well. And I was working for my uncle, and you were working for the courier company doing the deliveries for us.
That's it.
And that sometimes you were coming up nearly every day, weren't you?
Yeah, you give us a lot of business.
Yeah, was that year 2000 or 2001?
It's, it's, of course, at my age, it's a little bit difficult to remember all these
Yeah.
dates, but it's round about that time. It's round about that time, yeah.
And then I left working for my uncle in 2006, I think.
Yeah.
And we still stayed in touch. You carried on. In fact, by that time, we'd employed you at my uncle's company.
Yeah, I was employed.
That's right, yeah. We took you on as a van driver. We headhunted you.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I worked for you, yeah.
Predominantly down to the fact that you and I got on so well. And I was the first ever member of staff for my uncle's company. And so he gave me quite a lot of responsibility. And so I said to him, I think we should have Fred
Yeah.
because we got on so well.
Well, I think that was it because you got me a job.
Yeah.
So
And then we were thick
they
as
they
thieves.
they didn't sack me. They put me off.
But
They
that
were
was after
running down.
I'd already left by then, hadn't I?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I know. I meant Garlic Midwest.
I got it in West.
Yeah,
Right.
they put me off. That's
They
what
weren't
they
very
did.
nice, though, were they?
No,
In my opinion.
thereby hangs another story. Yeah,
Yes, I remember that clearly. It was, yeah. Well, we can
yeah.
smile about it now.
I do. I smile. I felt quite sorry for him actually. Um, the one, um, the one with the glass. I can't remember his name now.
Brian.
Brian. Yeah. He was okay, but the other one was a bit
Fiery.
very fiery. Yeah.
Anyway, so we met while you were at Gardner West in about 2001, let's say,
Yeah.
and then you came to work for my uncle's company in what, a year later, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
So you were full time as a van driver, and I was there as the salesperson,
That's it.
and we worked together for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. It's got to be that much.
Well, actually, maybe slightly. It must be 3 years because I left working for my uncle's company in 2005, and you were still there. You stayed on
Yeah.
because the business had been bought out by somebody else, mentioning no names.
Yeah. I know. I know
And
what you mean. Yeah.
I left because everything had changed, and you carried on like the soldier that you are.
Yeah.
But we stayed in touch.
That's right. Yeah. And when he took it over, he moved to Wales.
That's right, yeah, and moved the business to Wales as well.
Yeah. And it was for me because I was coming up 65 then now.
And how old are you now?
80.
Are you 80?
Well, I'm 80 in June.
I don't wish your life away, Fred. You're in your 70s.
Yeah, I'm
You're in your
79.
70s.
Yeah. I
So
wanted to make my 80th year, you know?
Yes, you've done it.
Yeah.
So then we stayed in touch after I left the business, 2005. We stayed in touch for 5 years. That's testament to the strength of our relationship and
Yeah.
how well we got on.
Yeah. Yeah. I
We
mean,
stayed in touch regularly, actually, for 5 years,
Yeah.
even though I wasn't allowed to,
No.
wasn't supposed to.
I think one of the reasons why is that my own son, um, he was a drug addict, and you
Right.
took his place.
Bless you, Fred.
But you did.
In many ways, you took the place of my father.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. But that was the dynamics there, and that's why I think we were close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
So
I agree.
yeah, that was both a difficult time and a pleasant time.
Yeah, so I've been struggling about, uh, wondering for a long time because I understand that a lot of people find my story quite interesting,
Oh
but it's
yeah,
very difficult for me because I don't like to remember a lot of it, because there were some good memories, but there were a lot that weren't good memories, and so I did start to write a book, and then a lot of my friends were saying to me, "Oh, I really would like to read your book. When's your book finished? When's your book finished?" And I'd hit a block, and I just hadn't been able to continue writing it because of the memories it was bringing back. Um, and so I thought maybe I know what I'll do. I'll go down to Gloucester, go and see Fred, and sit and reminisce about old times. And I'd like to know what your perception of things were in those difficult times when you helped me out the most. Because I think what we haven't mentioned, which is the reason why I'm here, is that I just wanted to go over the time in my life, either before and after I escaped from the cult. Because, as you know, I was born into a cult, and my parents were born into the same cult,
yeah,
and my grandparents were born into the same cult,
yeah.
and nobody hardly ever leaves. And it was a very, very difficult time for me, but I knew it wasn't for me. Is
Jip,
she okay?
come here.
Bless her. And it was a very difficult time for me, and in many ways, you were.
Come here.
She wants me to pet her.
Yeah, she wants. Come here. Come on, Jip. Come here. Come on, let's go for you.
Come on then.
You
Yeah,
wouldn't
and
cut that bit out.
that's right. And you were instrumental in helping me to leave or to escape, as it were,
Yeah.
on the 9th of February 2010, which
Oh, you
is,
can remember the actual date.
yeah, very clearly, yeah. It was just over 13 years ago.
13 years.
Yeah.
Whoosh.
And
Yeah.
I mean, being born into it, I didn't know any different. We had no TV, no radio, couldn't listen to music, couldn't go to pubs, clubs,
That
uh,
fascinated me.
couldn't go to restaurants, hotels, weren't allowed to go on holiday, obviously couldn't smoke or do drugs. Actually, while I was in the cult, we used to joke amongst ourselves that there was only three things we were allowed to do in life, and that was go to church, go to work, and drink alcohol. And we were really good at all three things.
I knew that you were good, yeah. Yeah,
So, I mean, the social life in the cult was absolutely amazing. It's, because you don't go to pubs or restaurants, so you're in each other's houses a lot, and it's very sociable and it's very safe. So, I mean, I had a,
that's the way it was designed, though, wasn't it?
yeah, but I mean, for the most part, it was a brilliant life, and there's a lot of wealth in the cult, and so everyone has a very high standard of living. And actually, certainly growing up as a child, there's two things I'll always be thankful for from the cult, and one was the safe and secure upbringing as a child, and the other thing was their business teaching. They're very, very good at business and making money.
Yeah. From my perspective, I used to, um, I used to look at you. I used to look at the kids because I didn't know about that particular cult at the time.
Yeah,
I didn't know what the dynamics were or anything like that. But one thing that stuck out a mile was how well the kids behaved, how balanced they were.
yeah,
You know, because I lived on an estate
yeah. In Matson,
and I stood the worst of it. But all of the children, they were so well mannered. and not in an unnatural way. It
No,
was natural,
very
you know.
old-fashioned values, of course.
It was,
Yeah,
but it was really charming. I
yeah.
found it really charming.
Um, but of course, the things that I couldn't deal with was the control, and it felt like my entire life was imploding around me. And when you look at all aspects of my life, my ex-wife, my parents, my career, if you like, and that was pretty much it. That was what made up my life. And when I left my father's business in 1999, he never forgave me. Even though I went on to stay in the cult for another 11 years, he never ever forgave me. And in fact, when we used that because that was before I was married, and when we used to go for dinner in somebody's house, because you always had to travel as a family, you couldn't go somewhere on your own. Um, uh, that's not quite true, but in terms of going for dinner, you'd always go as a family. Um, and we'd be sat at the dinner table with like 20 people around the table, like massive banquets they used to have. It was incredible food. And it was all a massive scandal because my father's business was very successful and I was the eldest son, so I was supposed to inherit it. But I didn't want to be that spoilt kid born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And for everyone to say all my life, oh, it's all right for you, you got wealthy parents. And so I kind of rejected that and thought, I'm not going to just sit here and do this job for the rest of my life. I want to go and pave my own way. But as per the rules of the cult, if I went to work for another business, the owner of that business had to be a cult member. Well, they don't call it a cult; they call it a religion. Okay, whatever. So I went from being son and heir, if you like, to a decent sized business to actually being an employee. And everyone else was trying to make the transition to owning their own business and the fruits of that, what comes from having your own business, to from being an employee, which is really difficult. And I went the wrong way. I went from being son of the owner to just being an employee.
That was part of your being an individual, isn't it?
Yes, and actually, at that moment in time in 1999, I had to hand my notice in to my own dad in writing, and I did it in the most disrespectful. Because I was so angry. I was so angry that my dad didn't care that I was leaving, and he didn't try to keep me. And I took a piece of paper out of the photocopier tray. I'm not proud of this, by the way. Took a piece of paper out of the photocopier tray and ripped a quarter of the page and just scrawled on there, "Dear Stuart, please accept this as my letter of resignation. I'm leaving in a month's time. This is my month's notice. Stephen." And I left it on his desk just as a torn off piece of paper because my father was very traditional, like headmaster esque, and everything had to be done properly, and it was very old school. And it was weird because we actually got on before I left, but after I left, he completely disowned me. Even in the religion, he just treated my brother with everything he could possibly give him and pour on him, and he was constantly in my dad's house. And yet, when I went years without ever being invited to my dad's house at all, and yet my brother was there 3 or 4 times a week. So it was felt. It was a real deep, uh, difficult time. And then at these dinner parties, after it happened, because everyone was in so much shock, like the owner's son has gone to work for somebody else. That somebody else happened to be my dad's younger brother, who was a one-man band compared to my father's fairly successful business. And at these dinner parties, the host always end up bringing it up in conversation because everyone was so shocked by it all, to say, "Oh, is that right? Stephen's gone to work for Graham." And my father always used to say, "Huh, yes, he's gone to work for a Mickey Mouse company." And that was his own brother's company.
Do you know? I don't understand that. I just don't understand that.
He was hurt. He was really hurt
He
that I
was hurt.
left,
I can understand him
but he
being
didn't try
hurt,
and
but
fix it.
I can't understand it disowning you.
Yeah, had nothing to do with me.
No.
And we're still going to the same church 10 times a week, every single night, and 4 times on a Sunday.
Gentle Jesus, meek and mild. That's what I used to think about it. I had to discover what it was like, the cult, all about it. I learned most of it from you.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
you actually interacted with quite a few members of that religion, didn't
oh,
you?
I did.
Over the time, because
I did.
the person that bought my uncle's business and became your new boss was also a member of the same religion.
Yeah, yeah. But I noticed little things, you know. We couldn't eat our sandwiches together,
Yeah, or have a cup of coffee together.
or have a cup of coffee together, or anything
You can't
like
eat.
that.
You can't eat and drink with anybody else. It's
No,
separation from the world. The
no.
world is all the people out here in the real world.
Yeah,
They refer to that as the world,
yeah.
and we don't have any part of that. And we're not allowed to make friends from the outside world either.
No, see, I couldn't understand that. You can't help liking people, can you? You can't help liking some
You can't help
people.
who you like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I never understood it, but hey, it was the way that it was.
yeah.
But I thought it was, to be honest, I thought it was cruel. I thought it was really cruel.
Well, we didn't know any different, so it wasn't any
No,
difference to
no.
us.
But from my side, I never knew my father. I would have loved to have had a father,
Yeah,
but that for your father to disown you, that quite shocked me. That did.
yeah, yeah.
It really
Well,
quite shocked me because I knew you by this time.
yeah.
I
And
knew,
so that was the start of the demise, really, of my situation in the religion, because, as I said, my life started to implode. So, 1999, my parents disowned me, even though they're sat across church, like looking at me, and I'm still able to have contact because I was still in it, but I didn't have contact with them because of what had happened with me leaving the family
yeah.
business. But and then so that was my parents gone. So what have I got left? I had my then wife and my job.
Let me
Obviously,
get
my
rid of that
friends.
dog.
No problem.
She wants to go in the other room. Come on, then. Come on, Jim. Come on, come on. Into bed. Good girl. Yeah, she's going to keep walking on this.
Now she wants to get back in.
Let's see what she's like.
So that was my parents gone out of my life, and all I had really left was my job and my then wife, and there was quite a few complications in my career, shall we say, um, which is probably best not to go into. I just felt like I got uh, taken advantage of because I was always in sales, and every time I went to work for a new company, obviously owned by somebody in the religion, um, I would be on sales, and in every single, it sounds like I had loads of jobs. I didn't really, only 2 or 3 after that. Every single job, I smashed the targets, and so was earning really good money with commission. And as soon as when I start, they would say, "Oh, well, if you can reach this, that would be amazing." And then I smashed it and was earning a lot of money, and they didn't like it. And like, "Oh, well, you've won us the business now, but we can't keep paying you all this commission." Well, when I started, you wanted that business. Now I've got it for you. You don't want to pay me. And because I couldn't go to the police and say, or take them to, I couldn't take them to court. And so I just had to accept it. And every time, overachieve and then get it all taken away from you again. And I didn't really suffer fools gladly, so I didn't take kindly to it. So I walked out and went and got a new job. And then the same thing happened again. So I wanted to have my own business so that this wouldn't keep happening. But they wouldn't let me have my own business because then I'd have my own financial freedom, if you like. And they wanted to make sure that I was still answerable to somebody in the religion on a daily basis.
They kept sucking you in all the time.
Yeah, so they wanted to make sure that I always had that my boss was a member of the religion, Um, and if I had had my own business, then I'd be my own boss and wouldn't have to answer to anybody. And they did not want that to happen. So they flat out refused to let me have my own business. And I just got less and less happy and more depressed. Um, and so it then came down to about, I, my memory is so bad of that particular time around when I escaped was um, it all came to a head. I think it was in the October, November, no, in the October time, 2009, and I I'd lost all interest in everything. I'd lost all interest in the religion. I'd lost all interest in my life. I hated the fact that my parents disowned me and everything that was going on between us. And so I did start being a bit of a naughty boy, as per the rules of religion. Um, and then one day I just thought to myself, I just, it doesn't sit right with me. I don't feel, I feel bad that I'm doing these bad things that I shouldn't be doing, as per the rules of religion.
Like
So,
watching the television.
no, it wasn't that actually. But this weighed heavily on my conscience. And so one night after church, I sat my then wife down, now my ex-wife, sat her down with a drink, and I said, um, "I've got something I want to tell you. I've been doing bad things which I shouldn't have been doing." And she went white. She thought I'd been having an affair. Nothing further from the truth. And she said, "What have you been doing?" And I said, "The reason why I'm telling you this is so that you can help me to go back on the straight and narrow, and you can help me to stop doing these things because I don't want to do them, but I do them. If that makes sense."
Yeah, good.
And so I said, if I tell you what I've been doing, and then every day when I get home from work, you're going to say, "How's your day been? Has it been a good day or has it been a bad day?" Bad day meaning that I've done stuff I shouldn't have been doing. And um, if I know that she's going to ask me, then I'm more likely to not do those things so that that evening I can say, "I've had a good day today." And hopefully wean me off and I'll stop doing it and we'll live happily ever after. I said to her, I am scared stiff of being what was called shut up. So there's two levels of discipline. If you are shut up, you are confined. You're not allowed to go to church. You're not allowed to have any contact with any of your friends or anyone in the religion. Once a week, normally on a Monday night, you'll get a knock at the door and there'll be two priests and they'll sit in your lounge and bat, not batter you to death. That's not true. They were never violent. I was using that as a descriptive word. They will talk to you for lots of hours, normally maybe 3 or 4 hours in your lounge, and they'll ask you all the questions, and it's all psychological, and you feel trapped, and even though you've told them the things, if you have told them what you've been doing, this is being shut up, and it's a miserable existence because you're in limbo, you're in a vacuum. You can't enjoy the life on the outside world, and you can't enjoy the life in the religion or the social side. You're cut off from all your family and friends in the religion, but you're not allowed to do anything on the outside world either. So you're in a vacuum for an unknown period of time, and that normally the minimum it can be is 7 days, 1 week, but it's never 7 days. Normally it would be 6 months, a year, 18 months, and you're allowed to go to the supermarket because you have to live. Um, but your life is horrendous, and if you're working for, well, obviously everybody employee had to work for a business that was owned by the religion. So when you're going to work, because you've still got to work, when you're going to work, you are like walking in the office and there's other members of the religion and they all are instructed to completely ignore you unless there's anything specific to do with the business where they have no choice but to speak to you, and they're only allowed to say the minimum amount of what needs to be done for that task, and then they go back to ignoring you again. And it's horrendous. And I was so scared of being shut up, because I just thought I'm never going to be able to do what I need to do to go back in. And you have to, I'm trying to think of a polite way of saying it, kiss their feet almost.
Yeah,
And
but a bit higher up.
yeah, but and say all the right things in the right places, and
Yeah.
prove to them that you're never going to be naughty again. Anyway, so I said to my then wife, the reason why I'm telling you this is so that you can help me to stop doing these things, and I don't want to get into trouble. I want to be the perfect Christian boy that I'm supposed to be. And she said, "What have you been doing?" And I said, and I can't believe, now it seems so strange to say it, but I said to her, I've been going to the pub for beers, and I've been going to the cinema to watch films. No particular film. I went several times and just watched, I don't know, whatever was on at the moment. I didn't actually care. I just wanted to see this amazing, massive screen. We didn't even have television in the house. So I said, and I just want you to help me to stop doing these things, stop going to the pub and stop going to the cinema. But of course, these crimes were very, very serious because I was a married man and I'm more responsible. If I was a teenager, maybe I get a slap wrist and told to behave. But being a homeowner and a married man, it was very, very serious. So she was very upset because she knew that the minimum that would happen would be that we would get shut up and confined. And the maximum is the next punishment up, which is called being withdrawn from, when you are excommunicated from the religion.
Do they throw you out?
They have a ceremony to either shut you up or withdraw from you, and it's so you're not there if the person involved isn't there at the ceremony, but it is so humiliating to the person, even though they're not there, and the family, because they talk about the things you've been doing and the reason why they're shutting you up or withdrawing from you. And it's very difficult to come back from that, because once somebody's been shut up or withdrawn from, they're tainted for life in the religion. And so for the rest of your days, everyone will look at you and think that's the guy that got shut up for going to the cinema, for instance.
Did they ever think of forgiving you for your sins?
Well, you have to ask the Lord for forgiveness.
And
So,
then they follow
but
on.
they decide whether they think that the Lord has forgiven me.
So they're in direct contact.
It's a, it's a very long.
This is the way I've always thought.
Yeah, there's a different perspective between you and I, because I didn't know any different, and you see things from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Yeah, so that was the day when that was the night before I rang you on that fateful day, the following day, because I was at work in the office just south of Gloucester, and I had a phone call. Actually, I must have been on the phone to a customer, because it came through to my voicemail, and it was a voicemail from one of my priests to say, Stephen, we want to talk to you. Basically, you're in a lot of trouble. And they said, which was totally unusual, it can't wait until tonight.
Shut her up.
Yeah, if you like. We can't wait until tonight. We're coming to your office to speak to you right now.
Come on.
So they told me that they were coming in the middle of the afternoon, which is highly unusual, and that made the level of seriousness even higher. And it was only the night before that I told my wife that I'd been going to the cinema and the pub, so I knew what had happened. She basically told them.
She told them,
And I just felt right in that moment that my life was over. The net had finally closed. In fact, I rang you from the office. I walked outside and I rang you from the office. And I said to you, Fred, the noose is around my neck.
I remember.
As far as I was concerned, my life as I knew it was over because there was no coming back from that. And you said to me, "Where are you?" And I said, "South of Gloucestershire, in the middle of nowhere." And I knew that I was by the canal. And you said, "Walk up the canal towards Gloucester. There's a pub called the Anchor. I'll meet you at the Anchor." And before I left, I, I ripped off the desk pad so that it was all clean. And I had a company car because I was obviously still an employee at that time. And I put my company car keys in the middle of the desk pad, and I just wrote one word, "sorry," and then drew a big circle around the keys and the word "sorry." And I walked out, and nobody noticed I walked out because I could have been going to the toilet, I suppose. And I walked out, walked to the edge of the canal, and started walking towards Gloucester. And I was walking for maybe 5, 6 minutes, and I walked round the corner, and the canal disappeared into the distance. It looked like as if it was 100 miles long, and I couldn't see the end of it. And I just thought, oh my goodness, it was actually quite warm, and this is going to take me hours to walk to the Anchor Inn, where you said that you were going to meet me. And just as I was thinking this, what am I going to do? Because like you're not going to wait there for all that time, like 3 hours for me to get there. And I had this bob, 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 and I turned round and there was this narrowboat coming up the canal. So I'm in my office attire. So I put my thumb out to hitch a lift, and he pulled over and he looked at me. He's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm just going to meet my friend, and it's a long way to walk. So I'm very thankful for you to give me a lift." And then of course it was only what 10 minutes on the barge or the narrowboat. Maybe 15 minutes just chatting away to this guy. And we came around the corner and there was the Anchor Inn and you were stood on the bridge waving at me.
Yeah. Well, you was waving, or somebody was waving. I couldn't recognise him. I thought, what are you waving at me for? I was expecting you on the
Oh,
towpath.
of course, because you didn't know that I'd hitched a lift on the
No,
boat.
I was looking at the towpath all the time. Excuse me. And yeah, and I seen going like there. I thought, I'm sure I don't know anyone with a barge. Yeah, and then it was you.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 and then he dropped you off, and you come with me, and then you told me then what had happened.
Yeah, and I felt like I couldn't go back.
No,
And we went to your house, didn't we?
yeah, we went to my house, and you look terrible.
Yeah, I was in a
You
bad
look
place.
terrible. You was really emotionally
Ruined.
destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I had
um,
nothing left then. She was the only thing that I had left.
yeah,
My career had gone down the pan because I wanted to have my own business and couldn't. My
yeah.
parents disowned me, and now the last thing that I had in my life was my then wife, and she basically betrayed me and dropped
Yeah,
me in it.
and that was it. You hit rock bottom.
Yeah. Oh, as far as I was concerned, it was all over.
Yeah.
There's no way I could go back. And you always, ever since, you've described it as the greatest escape.
Oh, I mean, I look back and it's funny. You know, you're trying to get away from him, rushing away from him at 4 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't funny at the time. It was
No, it wasn't funny. It wasn't.
incredibly stressful, but
Yeah, but I mean, they did. They crushed you, and of course, I was looking at it from a different perspective than you, and that I thought that religions were all gentle. You know, they looked after people. If
well, they
they
did. Well, they did as long as you towed the line and did what you're told.
Yeah, but I would have thought even if you didn't toe the line, they would just gently guide you back on the path or whatever. But not to be so brutal as to ruin your whole life.
Yes, but that wasn't. my Great Escape, because somehow I think you must have encouraged me to go back to my house where my then wife was.
I did. I remember talking
You
to you
said
about
you
that.
should go back. You should go
Yeah,
back. And so you took me back that
but
evening.
yeah, I did. But you didn't know then that she betrayed you, was it?
Yeah,
Had she
I knew
betrayed
because
you before then?
there was no other way that they could know.
Right, yeah.
And what actually happened was, in the morning, she felt so guilty that it was on her conscience of these terrible things that I'd been going to the pub and the cinema, that she rang my sister, who's 2 years older than me, and she said to her, "I don't know what to do because Stephen told me last night that he's been going to the pub and the cinema. Now I feel like it's on my conscience and I don't know what to do." And of course, my sister turned around. You'd think that a family would back you up. Oh no. My sister turned around to her and said, "If you don't tell the priests, I'm going to, because now I know about it and it's on my conscience." Because
Well,
that's,
it's infective, isn't it?
well, this is how they have structured it over the years, that the iniquity of the iniquity is sin, and the iniquity basically not telling somebody when you know about somebody else, like when you're hiding something for somebody. Like if I told her, because I told her what I'd done, she would then be punished more than me for keeping it and not telling the priests. So whatever sin you've done, if you tell your best mate and your best mate doesn't tell the priests, your best mate is in far more trouble than the person that actually did the sin in the first place. So that it's self-policing.
Yeah. Yeah, like North Korea.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as say that.
Well, that's the sort of thing it is, isn't it?
Well, it was never.
You know,
It
like
was
the Russian state and all that.
Yeah, but
Um,
except they were never violent or
oh
physical.
no, say the violent, but
Psychological, yes.
there's a lot of psychological stuff going on there. But also that people feel that they got to, you know, if you confide in them that you've done something wrong, that they got to tell the priest.
Yeah.
You know, that is like North Korea, where all
Well,
these people they're reporting on people,
and so
and if they don't report on people, they're
yeah,
going to be in trouble.
yeah, and so you dropped me home that night, and I did go back to my house, and it was something like 11:30 at night or something. It was quite late at night when you dropped me back, and the priests were sat in my lounge of my house waiting for me to go back.
Is this
And
when you jumped out the window?
no, that was later.
Oh,
This was about 5 months previous to that.
Oh, right.
So this is
Yeah.
October, November with the narrowboat
Yeah.
time. And when I went back, they were waiting in my lounge, and they basically talked to me and asked me a million and one questions until about 3:30 in the morning. And this is midweek. And towards the end, I said, I mean, I was distraught. I was in pieces, you know. And towards the end, I said, "I suppose you're going to shut me up now." I was so shocked when my priest said, "No, we're not." And I literally looked at him and I said, "What? How can you not? You have to, because that's the rules." That kind of crime or sin, if you like, was always punished by being shut up or withdrawn from. And I said, "Why? How are you not going to shut me up?" And he looked at me and he said, "Because we fear we may never see you again." And in that moment, I thought, I've got away with this. Like, I was trying hard not to smile because I was thinking my life as I knew it, I thought had come to an end. And if I get punished by being shut up, I'm never going to survive that. I'm never going to be strong enough to fight to get back in because I've got no will to get back in. I don't even want to be in there anyway. And then all of a sudden, they're not going to shut me up. And so, kind of, I've got away with it really. Except from that day onwards, my relationship with my then wife was non existent. We had a brilliant marriage for 10 years, and
And
we
they
had a
ruined it.
it totally ruined it. We had a fantastic relationship. It was very, very happy time of my life. But the last 2 years before I left were horrendous. And in that period between the narrowboat and the 5 months between the narrowboat and me finally escaping for good, um, was absolutely horrendous. Because she had betrayed me, our relationship disappeared overnight. And we had to obviously live in the same house because we were married, and um, it was just horrendous. I just couldn't get it. Well, why would she do that to me?
How did this affect the kids?
I don't want to talk about that. It's too difficult for me to talk about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
But so those final 5 months were sheer hell because now every aspect of my life had gone. My parents, I had no relationship with my parents. I now had no relationship with my then wife, and I hated my career. I was never really interested in all the Bible studies and the reading that you had to do and all the praying and the whole Christian religion thing that we did. I was never into it. I wasn't even interested in it.
I sort of knew that. I
Yeah, I
knew
was
that you
basically
were.
just bobbing along the bottom,
Yeah.
just doing the minimum that I needed to do in terms of the religious stuff, and the minimum just to get through. So I always said that I had 5 reasons why I left eventually, and if you add them all together, I hated my life. And I was in such a bad place through those 5 months that I'm genuinely surprised that I survived. And the 5 reasons why I left, one was because I had no relationship with my father, and on a completely separate issue, no relationship with my mother, no relationship with my then wife because she betrayed me, and my career wasn't even. I had no interest in my career. I wanted to have my own business, and they wouldn't let me. And the fifth reason was because I didn't have any interest in the religious side of things.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I'm more of a believer in God now than I ever was when I was in the religion.
Oh, that's strange.
I mean, I never talk about it because it's private for me, and
Yeah.
it's a bit like a comfort blanket, really. It's comforting to know that there's somebody looking down on me. But when I was in the religion and you were force fed it, you had to do these things. It didn't really seem very real. And so, with all those 5 things, my life was awful. And in those last 5 months, my then boss actually said to me, "We're very concerned, Stephen, because it was so obvious to everyone. You saw it yourself how deeply unhappy I was, and what I didn't realise until many years later that I was deeply depressed." And my then boss said, "We really think that you're bipolar, which is a serious mental health issue, and we want you to go to a psychiatrist to be
I remember this.
to be tested." Yeah.
I remember this, and I remember thinking at the time what load of rubbish that was.
Well,
And I knew the reason why. The reason why I understood about that was because years before, in 1988, I had a massive breakdown,
oh,
right,
okay,
which
yeah,
was to
that's right.
do with my
You told
childhood.
you told me that, yeah,
Yeah, and so I knew how you felt when you were
yeah.
depressed because I went through a bad
That's why
depression.
you were able to help me.
That's why I wanted to help you.
Thank you for it.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do it. Um, so yeah, I did. I was with you there.
Yeah,
I knew what you were feeling.
yeah.
I couldn't do much about it,
No,
but
no, of course.
just be there when I
But
could.
you were there for me,
Yeah,
and we were in constant contact, which was
yeah.
lovely. And so they said, "We think you're bipolar," and I said, "I don't think I am, but thanks," or I don't know what I was supposed to say. Then they said, well, we're going to pay for you to go to see a psychiatrist, and but you can only go if you accept to go. We can't force you to go, but if you don't think you've got a problem, you've got a much bigger problem than we realised.
Oh, well, psychology, isn't it, eh?
And it blew my mind. I was like, I don't think I'm bipolar. But now, if I say that I don't think I'm bipolar, then you're telling me that that means I am bipolar. I was my brain was fried by this point, and I just said, look, I'll go for the test. I don't think I have, but if you want me to go, I'll go. So they paid for me to go to see Dr. Blacker in Bristol at the Priory.
Was he in the cult?
No, 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 because you couldn't be a doctor because you'd have to go to university. We weren't allowed to go to university, so
Oh, no,
nobody,
I didn't know that.
yeah, so nobody in the religion could ever become a doctor because you can't get a degree. You're not allowed to go to university. Anyway, so he was £500 an hour, but he at the time he was only seeing clients from the religion all day, every day, clients from religion, and they were forming a queue around the block for all the issues that they had. And so I went to see him, and he was this actually a nice guy. And he started asking me questions about my childhood, and then he jumped to what happened 2 weeks ago, and then he jumped back to when I was 10, and he jumped back to asking me something in my teens, then what was the earliest memory at 4 years old, and within less than 3 minutes, I had two 1 hour sessions with him. Less than 3 minutes, my brain was so fried that I couldn't even think or tried to, you tried to double guess why is he asking me that? Is it because of
Yeah.
this? Within 3 minutes, I gave up, and I was just like, whoa, just saying whatever he asked me. I was just telling the truth, like exactly how I felt and exactly what was going on. And he wouldn't even let me finish before he asked me the next question. So fast for 60 minutes. I was exhausted by the end, and at the end of the second visit, when I went to see him, like a week later or something, I'll never forget it. Bear in mind, at this moment, I was not for leaving. I, there was not even a remote possibility. I couldn't leave the religion. It just wasn't even in my mind. All that was in my mind was survival. How am I going to survive what I'm going through with my entire life crashing around me, around my ears? And so, at the end of the second session, um, I'll never forget it. It was like a scene out of a movie. And I was just sat in a chair, like my head was reeling from all these questions. And he jumped up and walked across his surgery office and opened the door with a flourish. And then he said, Stephen, you can go now. And I was like, I literally felt like I'd been drugged, but I hadn't. I was like, okay. And I got up, I kind of just like stumbled across his office and walked past him, mumbling a thanks. And I went down this really long corridor from his office. It was in a real old building in the Priory, Bristol. And I just heard Stephen, and then later, Stephen. And I stopped, and it was like I was in a fog, and I stopped, and I turned around, and I looked back down the corridor, and he still stood there with his hand on top of the door, and he's dressed impeccably in a full white suit, and he looked at me and he said, Stephen, you have to leave the religion. And I just looked at him and I just went, I was incredulous. I just went, I can. And I shook my head and walked off. There was no way I could leave the religion. And out of left of field, here's this guy who's being paid by the religion to try to diagnose me with having bipolar, now telling me on the last moment when he knew he'd never see me again, telling me to leave the very religion that's paying him.
He knew what was going on. He knew the dynamics.
Well, clearly, and on the bottom of my report, which I did get to read, but sadly I never get to keep. In his handwriting, it said right at the end, it said, "I can Stephen has a lot of material, but I can categorically state that Stephen is sane." How many people have been diagnosed as being sane?
Well, they should have sent you to me, then I could have told them.
And of course, so what I think, in my opinion, what I think they wanted was they wanted to get this diagnosis of bipolar so that they could then dose me up on meds,
Yeah,
and then I would be a complete cabbage.
you'd be in their grip all the time.
And so after that report came back to say that I wasn't bipolar, they said to me, "Oh, we think that you are very unhappy." I was like, "No kidding." So you should take antidepressants. And I've heard and witnessed some people going on antidepressants, and I'm not one for tablets anyway. And so I said, I do not want to go on antidepressants. Yes, I am deeply unhappy. I was actually very depressed, and everyone could see it. I mean, I was a shadow of my former self. I was in such a bad place. Well, you would have known that anyway. And they said if you don't take antidepressants, that means that you've got a really, really big problem. It's like an alcoholic saying that they are not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So, okay, I've got no choice then. Okay, so I'll take antidepressants. They gave them to my then wife and told her to make sure she was stood in front of me and watched me take them every day, and then tried to increase the dose. And I knew this was only going in one direction. I was going to end, I would, the dose would go up and up and up, and I would just end up as a cabbage. And by that point, I absolutely hated my life. Every day waking up, knowing that I had no choice, and just thinking, what am I doing? I've just got to keep going one day at a time. I've just got to get through today. How can I get through today? And then on the 9th of February 2010, something snapped, and I don't even to this day, I don't know what it was. And I was travelling home from being out on the road selling to customers, and I rang you, didn't I? And I said, I'm driving round and round Gloucester. I can't bear to go home. I can't do it anymore. I had no life. I hated it. So I knew the consequences of what would happen if I left, that I would get excommunicated, completely cut off from my family and all my friends. In my entire life, you were the only person on the outside world that I was in contact with. And I still say to this day, I didn't leave because I wanted the freedom of this world. I left because I hated my life in there. I was petrified of this outside world. I had no clue what was coming my way. I was scared stiff. You imagine all that being wrapped in cotton wool and all that safety and security of your job and your family and all your friends and the whole culture that you've known all your life, and then suddenly thrust into this unknown world where
Into the real world.
you've got absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And no safety net and no support at all, apart from yourself, of course. And I've tried to find an analogy for that to describe how I felt in the days after I escaped on the 9th of February 2010. And the only analogy I can come up with is if you imagine a young boy, in fact, a 5-year-old boy who's in a very strong family, mother, father, couple of other kids, very strong, close knit family in England, and they got the perfect life. And you take that 5-year-old boy, put him on a plane, fly him to somewhere in the Far East or the Middle East, where the culture and every aspect about everything is completely different. Even the language is different. and you take him into a little village, not a big city or anything, little village, take him down a side road, and just leave him there. He's on a dirt track in a country where he feels surrounded by aliens, and he doesn't even know the language. I did when in the first few months when I would go into a pub. I didn't even know what people were talking about. If they were talking about stuff that was on the TV or the radio, I had no. Obviously, they spoke English and I spoke English, but everything that they were saying, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so there was the integration into society in this world was extremely tough and so scary. But if somebody had said to me on the 8th of February 2010, you're going to leave tomorrow and you're never going to go back, I would have said, absolutely no way. There's no way that can happen because I will lose everything. And what am I going to do out there? And I rang you and you said to me, well, go home, change out of your work clothes, and then come round to mine and talk about it if you want to talk about it, or don't talk about it if you don't want to talk about it. We'll have a glass of wine and just try to calm the situation down. And there's one thing I always say about you, Fred, is that you never actually tried to influence me one way or the other. You were just there for me.
Yeah, you had to make your mind up. Not for me to make your mind up or whatever. You had to do all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I went round to your house and stayed for 3 nights.
Yeah.
And you and your wife were very kind to look after me. Um,
Which was unusual actually for my wife,
really?
my first wife. Yeah, because she wasn't really a generous person.
No,
No,
no, that is
but
true.
she recognised the state that you were in,
Yeah,
and she was sympathetic for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just massively appreciated it. It was.
Well, I'm sure you would have done it for somebody else, wouldn't you?
I would, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of things coming together there between you and I. Me with my life, how it was,
Yeah,
and you with yours, you
yeah,
know?
and especially strange, may I say, that your son was also called Stephen.
Yeah. Yeah. What a coincidence.
Yeah,
Yeah. I did tell you I lost him, didn't
you did. Yeah,
I? Yeah.
I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, okay. But no, he had it was lucky. He met somebody in London,
Right.
and a woman, like and she got him off the drugs,
Right.
and they ended up going up to Scotland, and he did the cold turkey,
Wow.
got off it. She helped him through it, and I've seen it what it's like when they come off,
Yeah.
and he did it, and he had another 5 years.
Wow.
So I was pleased for that.
Yeah.
Very pleased for that. Yeah, so yeah, our lives crossed like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Steve, of course, my son being Stephen felt the same way as well.
Yeah.
And naturally, I'm going to latch on to you, my boy.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at it.
Yeah.
Um,
I would just forever be eternally grateful for
well,
what you did for me.
I don't want gratitude because it was.
No, but you don't think you had. I still don't think you really realise how amazing it was what you did for me.
Oh well, I don't look at it like that. I was just glad that I helped you. You helped me because it was a two-way thing, which you
Yeah.
didn't know about.
Yeah.
But you helped me. You're like, oh, I wish my son was like Stephen, and that sort of stuff. So yeah, helped each other.
Yeah. It was a very difficult situation, but there's actually many times since I left the religion that, especially in those early days, that I can look back on and smile now. It makes me laugh almost because the situations were ridiculous. I was stood in a pub one day um, with some of my friends. So I moved back to my hometown of Cirencester, which was the only people to try to reconnect with the people that I went to school with because they obviously weren't in a religion. But that was 17 years previous. Obviously, found them on Facebook and met with them for a drink, and they remembered me from school and I them. So I was out with some friends, and we were stood in this group of about 6 or 7 people, and only one person in the group knew about my past because I don't want to talk about it because they'll just ask me questions all night, and I'm there to have a few beers with my friends. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so we're stood in this circle. I think there's like 5 men and 2 women, and out of nowhere, this guy just turned to me in front of everybody and said, "What's your favourite Madonna song, Stephen?" And I was like a rabbit in the headlights because I knew in that second I'm in trouble here because I don't know the name of a single Madonna song. I don't know the names of any of them, and yet I knew who Madonna was. I knew that Madonna was a singer, but I didn't know any of her songs. And if I say I don't know any, they're all just going to go, "What? Where have you been living all your life?" And then it's all going to come out. So I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. I didn't want to tell them about my past, but I couldn't name a single Madonna song. And thankfully, I just looked at my friend with like horror in my eyes, and he just stepped straight in with, "Oh, like a virgin, Stephen." Ha 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 ha. And I was like, "Yeah, like a virgin. That's my favourite song." And thankfully, he brushed it under the carpet. Obviously, I
Yeah.
wasn't a virgin because I've been married for 10 years, but in the religion. But it was just one of those moments that you'll never forget. And so I went back to my hometown, and on a Saturday afternoon, I sat in. It was in Cirencester. I was sat in what I could see was like the busiest pub. So I was trying. I was literally just sat there at the table, and I'm just people watching, trying to see if I can recognise anybody from 17 years ago at school. I mean, what's the chance of that? I mean, the population of Cirencester is like 20,000 people in the town, and I'm talking about the likelihood of somebody being in that pub that I went to school with 17 years previous. Um, and I sat there, and this guy walks past, and I said, "Excuse me." I mean, I got zero social skills at this point. I said, "Excuse me, uh, are you John Ling?" And he looked at me. He said, "Who's asking?" I said, I'm Stephen Gear. If you are John Ling, we went to school together." And he went, "No way. What are you doing in a pub? You're not allowed in pubs." Because he remembered from 17 years ago that we weren't allowed to go to pubs. And I said, "Yeah, I left that religion like a month ago." And he went, "Dude, let's have a drink." And he sat down and we chatted. We became, well, he became my best mate for the next 2 or 3 years. And he was, we weren't really that, we weren't friends at school, but we knew of each other, obviously. But he helped me so much in those early days that, again, I should be forever thankful for him. And he guided me through that tricky period. And the following week, we were out in Cirencester having a few beers, John and I, and getting on brilliant. And I'll never forget, he just turned to me, he was mid flow conversation, turned to me and he goes, "You're round." I went, "Oh my goodness. I know I'm supposed to know what that means. I have no clue what that means. You're round. You're round." I know that he's told me this before, what that is. "Oh, it means I've got to buy the beers." Because we weren't doing good at pubs. We used to go to each other's houses. So it was,
Yeah.
it was all free. You never paid for alcohol. Um, so, right. That means I've got to buy the beers. "Oh, okay. No problem. What do you want?" He said, "Lager again, same." So I was like, "Okay." And I'm going up to the bar. This is one of the first times I know I've been to the pub before, and I'm stood there and I'm thinking, all these things are going through my mind of what John Ling has taught me what not to do. And I've stood at the bar and I'm really thinking, I'm concentrating, I'm going, "Okay, don't get my wallet out, don't get any cash out, don't try to get the bar person's attention. Just be calm and patient and wait my turn. All these things that he's told me that you're not allowed to go. Oh, can I have a drink? You know what I mean? Because it's a bit rude. So I'm thinking all these things, and it's really busy. There's people rammed in there, and it's on a Friday night, and it's music's loud, and I'm really trying to focus, and they're understaffed. I stood there patiently waiting. This is like 10 minutes later. I thought, am I doing something wrong? Am I not doing this right? Why aren't they asking me if I want a drink? And as I'm stood there thinking these things, this voice next to me goes, "Where are you from then?" And I turn around, and there's this woman next to me, and I've always been, I can chat to anybody. So uh, I just looked at her and I said, "Oh, I'm from Cirencester." She went, "No, you're not. I go out every weekend, and I've been going out for years in Cirencester. I've never seen you." And I was like, obviously I can't tell her my backstory, so I'm like, "Oh, I was away. I've only just moved back." "Oh, right, okay." I said, "I've been waiting here 10 minutes already. It's just like service is really bad, and I just don't think they've got enough staff on." She went, "Yeah, it's always like that. Busy, isn't it, I suppose?" We're chatting away, and all of a sudden she goes to me, "What do you reckon we forget these drinks and you come back to my place?" Felt like I'd been stabbed through the heart because I knew what she was implying, and I'm only a few weeks into this modern society, and I'm absolutely horrified that she's invited me back to her house. I've only just met her 5 minutes ago. And so panic has set in now, and I have no clue how to handle this situation. And so I just remember going, no, no thanks, no. I mean, no thanks. Who says that? And she looked up at me and she went, "Why, are you gay?" I was double stabbed through the heart. The horror that somebody would think that I was gay. I mean, I've no issues with it now, but you have to remember that I was brought up for 33 years,
Sheltered life.
but not only sheltered, but in a very homophobic
Yeah,
culture. That obviously I'm not homophobic now, absolutely no problem with it at all. But um, at that point, everything was still so raw, and I was devastated that somebody would think I was gay. And I was like, "No, no, I'm not gay. I'm the straightest guy on the planet." And she went, "Well, you then." She got really cross because obviously I'd rejected her,
yeah.
and she swore at me and stomped off back to her friends. I was thinking, "Oh my goodness, that was so awkward. That was the worst thing ever." And through the fog, I heard, "Would you want a beer or not?" Like, pardon, what? "Yes, two lagers, please." So I got the two lagers, paid for them, went back to John Ling, and like, dude, you never guess what happened at the bar. See that woman over there with the red top on? She just asked me to go back to hers. And he looked at me and he went, "What are you waiting for? Why are you still talking to me? Get yourself over there." I went, "John, no, I never want to be that person." I'm not sure I quite always managed to stand by that thought, but at that moment in time, I was like, "This is the worst thing that could ever." I couldn't think of anything worse than going back to some woman's place as a one night stand or whatever.
Yeah.
It was so far away from my life as I knew it.
You had an awful lot to learn, didn't you?
Oh, massively,
Oh
massively.
dear, from
One,
that.
and I also remember um, being utterly shocked by how crude the conversation was, even around females and women. Like our conversation was never crude. End of in the religion, never
No.
crude, never even talked about things like that. And here I'm in a pub with some guys that I have known for a short period of time who are talking about extremely explicit things in front of two females. I remember thinking, "Oh, I'm so uncomfortable with this. I, I don't know where to look. I don't want to be in this conversation." They were talking about stuff which anyone now would just feel was just like normal conversation, but
Yeah.
I was absolutely horrified. and that was all part of the integration into society and having to learn very quickly.
Yeah. You had a long way to go, didn't you?
Yeah,
A real long way to go. Yeah. I felt a lot of these things instinctively to you, how sheltered you were.
yeah.
And and as we're talking here, there's all sorts of things going on in my mind at the moment.
Tell me.
Um, it's about um, you touch on things that make me think of my own young life, which wasn't very nice. Um, we was sent away into a home, really bad child abuse
I
and
remember
all
you
that
telling
sort
me.
of
Yeah.
thing. Um, I don't know why it's making me think these things like that.
Mm,
I don't very often talk about things like this, mine. About what went on in my life.
yeah.
But somehow or other, talking here of me as a grown man and you as a young man, and you bringing up all these because you were saying about I used to have to go to church two times on a Sunday,
Only twice.
only twice.
We had to go 4 times.
Yeah, no, we only had to go twice.
Right.
We also had um, conf- is it confirmation? I think it was
Yeah.
lessons because we had to be confirmed into the church and all that. And it wasn't me.
No, well, like it wasn't me.
Yeah,
So there's similarities there as
yeah.
well.
Um, but yeah, you are making me think all sorts of things about my young life, and this why I understood about how you felt.
And why you're able to help me so much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was able to not say the things I should say, and or although I shouldn't say,
Yeah.
put it that way.
And I'll never forget that you told me that after when I finally escaped, and I used the word escaped
Is that what it
because,
was?
well, because I had to jump out of the bedroom window of my own home.
That was it. Yeah.
And my, well, the priests and my then wife were on high alert. I was considered to be a high risk leaver, and virtually nobody leaves, hardly ever. So it's a disaster if somebody does leave for them, or they feel like it's a very bad thing. They try to avoid it at all costs. And so I I was being watched, and I couldn't walk out the front door because the front door made a noise. And on that evening, my then wife was in the kitchen downstairs, and I was in the bedroom upstairs. And I knew that I couldn't go out. I couldn't go downstairs and out the front door because as soon as I touched that front door handle, she would have shot through from the kitchen, grabbed me by the arm, and go, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" Paranoid that I was leaving. It was on a daily basis. We lived like that on a daily basis. That she was in fear of me leaving, and so I knew that I couldn't walk out the front door because I didn't want the drama. I didn't want all the tears and the drama of walking out the front door. So um, what I did next was so bizarre to think of how my brain must have been functioning to do what I did on that night of the 9th of February 2010. I went up into the bedroom, got changed out of my work clothes as you had suggested to me, and then I got a Tesco carrier bag and I put 3 pairs of boxer shorts, 3 pairs of socks, and one t-shirt into the Tesco carrier bag, knotted the top, opened the bedroom window, and chucked it out onto the grass. Then I went into the ensuite and I rang you from the ensuite and said, "I'm just getting changed. I'm just about to leave. I'll be with you shortly." And I remember leaning my head against the mirror and the coldness of the glass searing through my forehead. and the pain that I used to get across my forehead, the pain was so intense that the glass was really soothing, and I could feel every heartbeat right through thumping right throughout my body because I knew what I was about to do. And actually, without
Did you plan it?
no, well, only about, I don't know, was it an hour before I left? I rang you from my car because I had the Ill- illegal mobile phone that wasn't actually illegal, but I wasn't supposed to have it. And I rang you from that mobile from my car saying I'm driving around Gloucester. I don't want to go home. I can't bear. I can't do this anymore. I cannot continue. I was devastated, distraught, and that's when you said go home, get changed, and come round and have a glass of wine, and that I also wasn't supposed to do. And so without being over dramatic, 'cause I don't like to I don't like it when things get over dramatized. There's no question that in that moment it was very similar to, I hesitate to say this, but to somebody committing suicide. Because when somebody takes their own life, you either, everyone knows about it and it's a cry for help, or nobody knows about it and then it's done and it's all on the quiet and it's done and it just happens. And that's how I felt. I didn't want any fuss. I didn't want any drama. I just wanted to end my life as I knew it, and I couldn't cope with it anymore.
It was a kindness episode, wasn't it?
Thankfully, touch wood, I've never been. I've never felt the need to harm myself, which I'm very thankful for. But and so I looked out the bedroom window into that dark night and climbed through, jumped out the bedroom window, and then came round to your house. And the rest, as they say, is history. But that's why I use the term escaped rather than left, because I jumped out of the bedroom window of my own
Yeah,
house.
the window bit. Yeah,
Which
yeah.
was
And
bizarre.
then that's it. You had to sort your life out, and you had to go through. I mean, it must have been really, really hard, because you were so naive,
Oh, terribly naive.
so naive. Yeah,
In many ways, I still am. I mean, I've learnt a lot in the last 13 years, but
yeah. But it's all. It's nice to have a little bit of naivety behind you. It is.
yeah,
Adds to
maybe.
your personality.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's one hell of a story. That is. That is one hell of a story.
But I never like to talk about it. I don't mind talking about it now. And the reason why I'm talking to you about this is because I wanted to kind of reminisce, um, in the hope that maybe it'll be cathartic and it'll help.
It is a little bit of therapy, isn't
Yeah, therapy session with Fred.
it?
And of
Yeah,
course, after I jumped out the window and escaped, the next following days they put out a manhunt for me to try and find me, and they even turned up on your doorstep of your old house, didn't they?
yes, they
Where your
did.
ex-wife was, and they demanded to know where you lived because they knew if they could find out where you lived, they'd find me.
Yeah, yeah. I had expected them to find me.
Yeah,
You know, I wouldn't hide it from
no.
anybody, but I had expected it.
And
But I was going to let them have it.
your ex-wife thankfully told them to go
Go
away.
away. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, that's so
no.
long ago, isn't it?
13 years, yeah.
But I mean, you should be really proud of yourself. You
Not
really should
not
be proud of
really.
yourself because there's not many people could survive that
Well,
and be where you are today. There's
well,
not. There's not many people who've got that strength.
well, the very fact, I think, looking back on it, the reason why I left. Although I always say that those 5 reasons why I left, but ultimately it came back to the realization on that day that I was not going to survive if I stayed where I was. I was going to end up dead. I don't know how. I didn't ever for a minute think that I was going to harm myself or in that way, but I knew that I just wasn't going to survive, and I didn't want. There was many reasons why I didn't want to leave my family behind, but I had no choice. It
No,
was it was the lesser of the two evils.
yeah,
Like what's behind me, I absolutely hate my life, but the black hole of the real world that's in front of me is so scary. I don't want that either.
no,
But in the end, I felt not pushed, but I felt like because the survival instinct's kicking, if I stayed in that old life, I I wouldn't live to tell the tale. And so I left, and here I am, alive to tell the tale.
see, that's reminded me of an event in my life. Uh, as I said, I had a break in 1988. I had a breakdown, right, and it was to do with my childhood and abuse and all that sort of stuff. But it it took the form of uh, I was frightened of dying. I was frightened of dying because I hadn't really lived. That's what it was all about.
Right.
And I used to go to bed. I used to dread going to bed. And I go to bed and I would try to get to sleep, but I wouldn't. The realization that I'm going to die just came into me,
Wow.
and I couldn't shake it off. I couldn't go to sleep, and then every night I go out, at night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, wandering round, and I was looking for a light on it in somebody's window, who I knew that there was some life going on in there.
Mm.
And that went on for months, months and months. And then one day I went upstairs to bed, and then the thought came back in again about dying. And then I thought, I've had enough of this. I've really had enough of it. I'm just going to let those thoughts come into me. Come on, come, let me have it. Let me
Yeah.
have it. And it went away.
Right. As
It,
soon as you,
all that went away.
as soon as you're able to face it, it
Yeah,
disappeared.
faced it. I thought, I'll have the worst. I'll have the worst. And it went. It just disappeared.
Wow.
It disappeared. And and ever since then, my life took off. My life took off because I was relatively uneducated, but I then began reading Charles Dickens.
And went on to become a successful writer.
I started writing myself as well,
Yeah.
yeah, and doing poetry and all that sort of thing, yeah. And I cracked it. And this is what you've done. You've cracked it.
I wouldn't say I've cracked it. I don't
Oh, I
feel
do. I
like
think
I
you cracked it. I mean, you're dragging all the bits behind you,
don't.
and like everybody does, really.
Yeah, you never know what people are going through or
No,
what
you
they've
don't.
been through,
You
do you?
don't.
But one thing that always used to that really hit home to me about you and your influence on my life was that the more I got to know you, the more amazing you were to me, and the more I looked up to you because society, like you can imagine me trying to adjust to life out in the outside world and going from a lifetime of privilege with my family, my parents, and then ending up basically with nothing, and everyone around you seems like they've totally got their life on track and they're absolutely smashing it. and to try to come to terms with having to rebuild from zero, in fact, worse than zero. Um, and yet here was a man, you, who was so incredibly and genuinely so happy because the sun was shining. And you took so much pleasure out of such small things when the whole of society is trying to dictate that you have to buy a new car as often as possible, at least every year. You have to have a big house with a massive mortgage and drown yourself in debt because that's what society dictates that you've got to do. And then out of nowhere, this was you, Fred, so happy that the sun was shining. And it blew my mind. I was like, this guy is genuinely happy from the smallest of things.
Yeah.
And I really hung on to that, and that helped me through the early times when I had nothing and was so fearful of everything. And yet, don't worry, the sun's shining. Fred's happy, I'm happy.
Yeah. There's something to take away for everybody in this, isn't there? That you can get through the worst of times.
Yeah,
You know, they say that if you break a leg, the leg heals, but it heals stronger. That also happens to the spirit as well. I say spirit with some reservations because I am a non-believer. But but whatever it is inside of you, it can experience the worst of things and come out stronger at the end.
yeah,
It can. I mean, I think about people who have actually ended their lives. If only they could have talked about it to someone else, you know, let it out, you know,
yeah.
they wouldn't have done that.
It's tragic, isn't it? It's so
It
sad.
is so tragic. I know a few from my upbringing, some of the boys, did a boys' home with about 60 boys in there. And there was quite a few who committed suicide.
Mm,
Because of other circumstances, not just in that place, but of the family breakup or the cruelty before
yeah.
then or whatever. But they did. And so sad that is.
Yeah, well, as you know, I lived in Spain for 5 years,
Yeah.
2016 to 2021. And in that time, I met lots of amazing people. But one that really stuck out in my mind was a guy called Billy Seary from Ireland. And his parents had a place there, and he used to come over with his parents once a year or something.
Let me go and get a bottle of wine. I want to listen
Okay.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What time is it? Oh, I normally open one by about 8 o'clock.
10 to 9 at night, Fred.
Yeah. I really enjoy it tonight.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah. Carry on telling about this.
Yeah, so I I met this young lad called Billy Seary in Spain, and we just instantly clicked. And he was quite several years younger than me, but such a good laugh, absolute life and soul of the party. He was so funny, so witty, and lovely parents as well. Jerry Seary was a fantastic singer, and they always said hello, and so I ended up each time Billy came over, we'd always go out for beers with him, and sometimes stayed out perhaps a bit later than we should have, but we had such a great time, and he was just full of life, and very very sadly he he passed away, and he'd obviously been struggling with life as well, and nobody, well, I don't say nobody knew, but I certainly didn't know. He was always, seemed as happy as anything. And it just goes to show that you never know what people are going through.
No, no.
And it's so tragic.
It's I've always been when I was went through that black period. I went for therapy. I paid for therapy. It was really expensive, and I wasn't working at the time, and and I used to be like that when I was much younger, always happy and whatnot, but I wasn't. I was carrying around a hell of a lot,
Yeah.
and therapy was good because I liken it to an onion. You know, if you talk about something that's a bit disturbing, then once you talk about it seems to exorcise it, if you like, and that's the leaf of the onion. So the more leaves you strip off the onion, you come to the sweetness in the middle, you know, and that's what happened to me.
Yeah, see,
And that's what happened to all people.
I've never been to therapy.
No,
And some of my friends said, "Oh, you should go to therapy."
yeah, it's
And I
good.
was saying to them, "Why?" Because it would take 10 years of therapy every week before the therapist could even come close to understanding
No,
my situation. It,
no, don't.
how can they help me and advise me if they know nothing about what they're talking about? I mean, no, I
Well,
don't mean that as a. I don't mean.
no, I
I
know
don't
what
mean
you mean.
professionally.
I
I
know
mean
what you mean.
about the culture that I came from.
No. Oh no, I mean that's a unique culture that was. But I suppose it wasn't really about it. It was all about you. It would have been the therapy. It was about you and how you feel and all that.
Right.
You know, because
Maybe this is my first therapy session.
maybe yeah, I'll have to work out what sort of price I can charge.
Yeah.
But at first, therapy. Um, my doctor said to me, "You better have some therapy. We organise it for you." And all the therapy. They think I'm mad. You know, and that's
Yeah.
what I thought. I thought, I had to be mad to have a therapist, but
Yeah.
I was forced to go with some really black moments, and I went, and I I just sat in a room. The therapist didn't say anything. Sat in the room, and I just burst into tears,
Really.
and um, then you talk a little bit, and then the next time you go, the following week, you open up these little bits like that. Then you get an idea of your life inside. You start to get that idea. You're still carrying around all the rubbish and all that.
Yeah.
But the more you talk about it, the more you. Because once you talk about it, it's like flinging it out from inside of you.
Right.
Yeah. And then you can talk about anything then.
It's interesting because my survival instinct has always been shut the box, lock the bolt, and throw away the key. Keep it buried.
Yeah. No, I don't know if I told you about when I knew I was well. I used to dream a lot, and they were all dark green, being chased by a bear or a black panther or something like all that sort of dream. But as I got into this therapy, I began to feel I also used to have a knot there.
Yeah. Anxiety.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a knot, and I couldn't get rid of it. I just felt it all the time.
I get that from time to
Yeah,
time.
but I did a dream one night, and I dreamt I was driving a lorry, and I was going to Bath. You know,
Right.
you go down the A46,
Yeah. Yeah.
you come to you come to a road like that and you turn right to Bath. And I pulled up and wait for the traffic to go, it cleared, so I drove across. And then somebody shouted to me, "Fred, your sheets come off." I stopped the lorry and walked back, dragged this sheet, really heavy sheet, got up beside the lorry, pulled it over covered the lorry back over again, and I thought, what am I carrying? And I threw
This
the
was
sheet
in your
off.
this was in your dream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I threw the sheet off, and this light, brilliant. It always makes me emotional when I say it,
Yeah.
but it was a brilliant light that come out of it, and it sort of glorified me in a way, you know.
Yeah.
And I woke up, I slept on the next day, you know, and I got up and I felt really good.
Wow.
I felt wonderful, and I knew that I'd gone through it and come out the other side.
Yeah. Was that the first time you felt good for a long time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, some people might say it was Holy Spirit or whatever,
Yeah.
but it just shows you what's inside a human being,
Yeah.
you know, and you can hide all this stuff. It's got to come out sometime.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
I was going to say, how's the wine?
I wish you could have a nice Rioja Reserva.
Looks lovely.
Yeah.
Next time, we'll have to go for dinner.
Yeah, we'll have one, yeah. Yeah, and we'll have some Rioja Reserva,
Yeah.
Grand Reserva.
Grand Reserva.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
So you're one of the very few people that has known me from before I left the religion and after I left the religion.
Yeah.
There's not many. Obviously, the people I went to school with, but they only knew me when I was a little child, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yours is really interesting. I've thought about it many, many times, your story.
But also the bizarre things that have happened to me since I left. Like, how do these things keep happening to me? So, as you know, I left in the February, and I would just do anything to work, and I ended up being um, a labourer to carry the tools in for a guy called Sean Ziemba from Cirencester, who's a plumber. John Ling, one of John Ling's friends, and he was paying me to carry the tools in. I mean, I've been a salesperson all my life. I've never done a labourer's job. Did that for a few months, and then started a business with a guy that I knew before I left, but he had never been anything to do with the religion. And I had this idea of what I wanted to do for my own business. And he was a multimillionaire, and he said, "Well, I'll put the money in, you do the work, you build the business." So I did that for 5 years, and then after 5 years, he handed me this note, and I probably shouldn't say too much, but he basically didn't do anything illegal, but I was a 50% shareholder of the business, and we were making a lot of money by the fifth year. And he saw the pound signs and wanted it all for himself, and he basically kicked me out of the business. He didn't do anything illegal, but what he did wasn't, shall we say, good practice.
No.
I was horrified. He destroyed, 2015, for the second time in my life, I lost absolutely
I
everything.
remember that.
And a few months before he kicked me out, I'll try and do the short version of this story, because it grows arms and legs throughout. So about 4 or 5 months before he kicked me out, I was really worried. I knew something wasn't right, and I was worried that I'm going to lose everything. And so I was at a party at a weekend, and I was at an ex-member of the religion, because when you are friends with another ex-member of the religion, you know what each other has been through. So you have that unspoken kind of understanding of each other that goes back years. And so I was at this ex-member's house for a party. Her next door neighbour was a guy called Owen Rothwell, who I'm still friends with today, and he was the marketing manager at Ferrari's biggest dealers in the world. There's a company called HR Owen, the biggest Ferrari dealers in the world. And what a glamorous job, you know, chance to bring home a Ferrari at the weekend as a company car is just incredible. And he is such a lovely bloke, and we just hit it off straight away. And so I confided in him at this party, and I said, oh, that's, I, I own 50% of this business, and I've, I'm worried that my business partner's going to screw me over. Something's not right. And he said, well, you need to speak to somebody that has got the experience that will be able to help you out. He said, that's not me, but I know a man that will be able to give some advice on it. Is one of my very close friends. Is actually the sales manager of HRO in Ferrari. And I was like, well, he's not going to be interested. He doesn't even know me. Oh, no, it's not like that. Don't worry. So I then get a call in the week from Owen, very kindly, saying, Stephen, you need to, Tim wants to see you. Next time you're in London, come along to the Ferrari garage in Knightsbridge, which is where his office is, and he wants to chat through things with you. I was like, this is a bit strange. Why would he want to do this? So anyway, so I go to the next time I'm in London, I called in and got shown through to his office. Guy I'd never met before, and he said, well, we chatted for like 2.5 hours, and he was so kind. And I kept thinking to myself, is this a dream? Like, what's going on? And then at the end of it, he said, well, actually, I think that you need somebody that is to help you, that is more a numbers person from what you've told me of your concerns. He said, and I'm not that person, but I do know a man that is. And I'm like, here we go again. And he said, I'm having a beer tomorrow night with the financial director who sits on the board of HRO and Ferrari, Adrian Martin. And I'm thinking, this is getting ridiculous. So I said, well, okay, thank you very much for listening. He said, I'll ring you in a week. And he rings me back about 3 days later and says, what are you doing this weekend? I said, well, nothing really. He said, there's a Ferrari track day at Silverstone. Can you get to Silverstone? Because Adrian would really like to meet you. I'm like, what? Little me from Cirencester, who's basically just trying to get through life and survive. Why would the financial director of Ferrari's biggest dealers in the world be interested in talking to me? Anyway, so I go to Silverstone, and Owen was actually there, my friend Owen, and he showed me where to park, and then took me up through VIP and out onto the balcony overlooking the start-finish line, which is the most exclusive place to be. And there down the end of the balcony is dear Adrian Martin and his wife. I hope it's okay to mention him by name. I hope he won't mind. And when I looked at him, I just thought, his very kind eyes, he was really like everybody's favourite granddad. And he just, he only spoke to me for about 2 minutes, and he said, today we're here to appreciate the cars. I just wanted to meet you, Stephen, and to tell you that next time you're in London, come to my apartment. Here's the address or postcode or whatever. And so a couple of weeks later, I was going to London, so I sent him a text message, and he said, yes, I'm there on that day. Perfect. Gave me the instructions on how to get in. Went up to his apartment, which was absolutely amazing, overlooking the whole of London. And what an amazing bloke. He sat there for 3 hours and just asked me questions and all about my life story, and then all about the business and the more specifics and what I thought was going on and what actually was going on. And at the end of it, he said, I'd like to help you. And I said, there and then, I said, I really appreciate that. I'm blown away, but I have no money. all my everything that I've got is in the business. I can't pay you. And he said, no, I'm not asking you to pay me. I said, so why would you do that? Why do you want to help me? I don't understand. Like, what's going on? And and he said, sometimes it's not about money. Sometimes it's about good people doing good things for good people. And I'm choking up now thinking about it. But as busy as Adrian was, at the level that he was, he spent the next 15 months, of which we had a court case eventually with my ex-business partner. For the next 15 months, he either phoned me or sent me a text message or emailed me every single day, Monday to Friday, for 15 months. And then in the December, which was about 3 or 4 months later, when my business partner gave me the solicitor's letter and basically kicked me out of the business and wanted to keep it all for himself, I rang Adrian and it went straight to voicemail. And I'm not ashamed to say I was crying because for the second time in my life, I'd lost absolutely everything. This was December 2014. And I said, it's happened. All of my fears have come true today. He's kicked me out of the business. Adrian was also a financial director and sat on the board of the big yellow storage company. You know, you see them
Yeah,
everywhere, don't you?
yeah.
I mean, this guy, the level that he was at was incredible, and such a kind, genuine person, absolutely amazing. And he was in a board meeting for the big yellow storage company when I left the voicemail, and they went for a break to get a coffee, and he listened to his voicemail, went back into the board, which was only halfway through the meeting, and said, "I'm terribly sorry, I've got an emergency, I'll have to leave. Please update me um, in the following days." And left the board meeting, got in his car, and drove all the way to Cirencester from London to meet me for a beer and sit and talk to me. Like, what is going on? How is this even possible? Why is this happening? Why is this really lovely person being so nice to me when I've never done anything nice to him? He didn't even know me until 4 months ago. And now he's left this super important board meeting to come and take care of me. Like, talk about a guardian angel. And that's why, because obviously, well, not obviously, but him and his wife had matching his and hers Ferraris. And so I always refer to him fondly as my angel in a Ferrari. Because when I lost everything for the second time, he helped me out. And actually, um, because I was so worried about things going wrong with the business, I'd actually started up a side hustle, if you like, importing those hoverboards for the kids. And I started importing them, but I because I've been importing from China all my life, so it was easy. So I bought 10, sold them on eBay, bought another 10, sold them on eBay, bought 30, sold them on eBay, bought another 30, sold them on eBay, and then my business partner kicked me out, and so I lost overnight. I lost my income, couldn't afford to pay my rent. Adrian, which I'm sure was the right advice at the time, said to me, "You can't," because I was offered other jobs from people in the hygiene industry. As soon as they knew that I wasn't in that business any longer, "Oh, come and work for us, come and work for us," because they identified, I could maybe help them. But Adrian advised me not to get a job, and so for the first time in my entire life since I was left college, I was out of work. And I was out of work for like 7 months of the 15 months of the court case, to the point where I said to Adrian, I just can't survive any longer. I'm up to my neck in overdraft. I can't borrow any more money. I've got no money coming in, and I have to survive. So, unfortunately, even if my court case of me and my ex-business partner trying to fight it out in court as to whether he'd done anything illegal by kicking me out, um, Adrian gave me the advice that it would affect the court case. If I go and get a job in the same industry, it could affect the court case. So I said, unfortunately, I don't have a choice. I've got to go and get a job. So um, Adrian, I'm not sure whether to talk about this or not. Adrian did something for me that I will never ever forget, and he he was incredibly generous.
So that,
Yeah, and it took me 5 years to pay him back. But what a man! Absolutely amazing. And and I'm still in contact with him to this day. I spoke to him last week. He rang me up last week, just to see how I'm getting on. And he's very pleased with me. And we're hoping that we'll be able to meet up and have lunch or something again soon. But what a man! What an amazing person!
cheers to that man.
Cheers to Adrian. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're such a local bloke as well, Stephen.
Well, it's one thing I never forget this. Because I used to play tennis for Cirencester, and my teammates were. I was very very close to my teammates. They were really 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 good people. They were all quite a bit older than me. There was one guy called Steve Ball, and I don't see him as often as I'd like to. We occasionally, every couple of years, go for a curry, whatever. But fantastic bloke, and he has also, had it tough in some parts. But you know when you click with somebody, and I just got on so well with him. And at one point, he said to me, just when we were on our own, he said, "Do you know what, Stephen? The one thing about you is your honesty and integrity stands out so brightly that if you say you're going to do something, you do it. If you say you're going to be somewhere, you are there." And like, I can't remember the rest of what he said, but and I thought in that moment, and this was only maybe 3 years after I'd left the religion, and it was before I had got kicked out of my business. And I remember, I mean, because I was living on next to nothing in the best interest of the business. I was living on fresh air, just about enough to pay my rent and my bills and a little bit of beer money at the weekend. I had nothing. Um, and I remember looking in my wallet at the last £10 note that I had. And I remember thinking to myself, if my parents could see me now, they would laugh at me. And I thought, but you know what? I'd rather have my freedom than all the money in the world. And they can take my family away from me. They can take my ex-wife away from me. They can take everything that I had, my house, my cars, my friends, my family, my job. They took. Did they take or did I lose it? I don't know.
They took it.
And I thought in that moment, they can take everything from me, but the two things they can never take and I will never give up is my honesty and integrity. Doing the right thing when nobody's looking. It doesn't matter if, you know, with social media and everything and people seeing you do good stuff. You get people that take a video of themselves giving some money to a homeless person. I think that's terrible.
I do.
But and it's not about, giving for the sake of giving, but actually helping people. And thankfully I've been able to help a couple of people in a small way. But and in that moment I realised I'm never ever going to lose sight of my honesty and integrity. I knew that I had change coming upon me, and I knew that I was going to have, naturally, being exposed to this big wide world, I'm going to change, in whatever way, and maybe not be so naive. But I knew I was going to change, but I made a determined effort in that moment to make sure I never lost my honesty and integrity because I've got control over that.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I can always keep. And do you know what? It's really stood me through some tough times. Because if I hadn't have kept my honesty and integrity then, and I'd maybe gone on a slippery slope to be a completely different person, Adrian wouldn't have done what he did for me, and nor would the the others from the tennis team. But
Yeah. Now, there's always been that something solid about you. And this is one of the things that why I feel so proud of you for maintaining that honesty. You don't waver on it.
no,
You don't.
no,
And you can look anyone in the eye. That's the thing. If you're not honest, you cannot look people in the eye. You can do it forcefully, but you can't do it naturally.
yeah.
And yeah,
And I
I've
think,
known that about you ever since I've known you.
yeah, I think people can tell as well. They can
Oh,
tell
they
from a mile
can.
off.
They can. People can also ignore it as well, you know. But yeah, those that matter, they can see it.
Mm,
They can see it. They say, ah, I can trust him. I can trust him with me feelings, even. Which, if you can trust somebody with your feelings, then that's a high honour.
yeah,
That is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, what an adventure.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
And after, for those that obviously, there's a lot of people that don't know what's happened to me since that court case in 2015, where I did lose. Unfortunately, I lost the business because he did something very, very clever, which wasn't technically illegal. And the judge knew that what he had done. And the judge said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Gear, you need to be more careful what you sign." And it was my naivety that he was able um, to take the business off of me,
Yeah.
and I was left with nothing. And
I
so
wonder how he feels about himself.
he probably doesn't even care. He's probably not bothered at all. But
Well, so he's far too corrupt to know then, isn't he?
and so after I got kicked out, I had these almost a year of not really doing much. And then I started to work for a company in Malvern, still in the hygiene industry, and and I went to work for them because I wanted to learn about manufacturing toilet roll because I knew that's what I wanted to do because I knew that's where the volume is, that's where the money is. I need to learn about it, and then when the timing's right, I have my own business. And so in 2015-16, I was working for that company, and I don't know what came over me. I just decided all of a sudden one day I'm going to go and live in Spain. And actually, I only expected to go and live there for 1 year out. I was going to, by that time, I spoke to my employer and I said, look, I want to go live in Spain. And he said, well, you can't be an employee living in Spain. So I said, okay, what about if I'm a consultant and still carry on doing my work? Because I work from home most of the time anyway. And he said, a consultant is no problem because he could hire and fire me at will. You know what I mean? There's no problem. So I became a consultant and moved to Spain in August 2016. Um, and he said, I'll definitely give you 3 months' work, maybe 6 months. And I actually got 11 months. So I got nearly a year. And by that time, I'd finished the project and we parted ways amicably. And then, you know, I stayed living in Spain for another 3 months. And I was thinking, my money's going to run out. I'm going to need to move back to England. But I didn't want to have to move back to England because then that's society pressurizing me to do something I didn't really want to do. And I got a phone call I was playing in two bands at the time, one rock and roll band and one acoustic band. And I got a phone call from one of the local venues. It was a caravan park. And the owner said to me, are you working at the moment? Don't mean to be rude. And I said, no, I'm not actually. And he said, would you be interested in becoming our entertainments manager and organise all of our shows? I was like, yeah, brilliant. And so I took the job because it had a legal contract, which enabled me to get my Spanish residencia and get all my papers. So I took the contract and worked there for 9 months, and then got a phone call from one of my old competitors in the hygiene industry, a guy called Matt Anderson, and he rang me up and said, "Stephen, what are you up to nowadays?" And I said, "I'm not in the industry anymore. I'm living in Spain, working on a campsite." And he said, "That's such a shame. That's such a waste. You've done some, you've, because I was designing and developing new products for the hygiene industry. He said, you've done some great products. I've got some money to invest. Why don't we start a business together?" So I said, "Sounds great." And I went into business with him in 2018, September, July, August, September 2018, and spent the next 18 months designing and developing all of the products that I now have in my business. Um, and then we imported the first 2 containers from China, and they arrived 1 month before COVID hit and the entire country shut down. And all of our products were for commercial toilets, like in a pub toilet,
Oh,
and 100% had all closed. So overnight, we had no market. We had 2 containers of product and nobody to sell them to. And then, luckily, we were in the situation where the demand for sanitizer dispensers went through the roof. Of course, I've been importing soap and sanitizer dispensers from China for the last 10 years. So I was in the right place at the right time. But I don't feel like we jumped on the bandwagon because um, we'd already been importing those products, but the demand went up. So we were already selling them. We just sold huge amounts of them. And in 2020, we had a fantastic 4 months, which enabled us to get to where we are today. And the money that we made in those 4 months was enough to see us through the difficult time and out the other side. And then in July last year, Matt had been building up to starting another new business in ventilation, nothing to do with me. And he came into my office one day and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry I haven't been able to give enough time and attention to our business." He said, "I've just been thinking over the weekend. I think now would be a good time for you to buy me out." And so I just looked at him and said, "Well, I'd never be able to afford it." And he said, "Well, I've already had all my money back that I invested and then some. So I would like to make it affordable for you." And it was such a decent thing of him to do. And so July last year I bought him out. And now finally I have my own freedom in my work life and my own freedom in my private life. And finally, after getting to the ripe old age of 46 years old, I've finally got my own business that I own 100%.
brilliant.
But it's taken some blood, sweat, and tears to get there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it always does, doesn't it?
Yeah. And in the religion, they don't officially tell you this, but they always talk about those that have left, which are not many people. They say, well, if you leave, you're either going to become a drug addict, an alcoholic, in jail, or dead. That's what's going to happen to you if you leave. And so in the first
And
few
you proved
years,
it otherwise.
well, yeah, I mean, I was scared stiff of all of those things, so I was really careful. Like, don't drink too much, don't do drugs, don't get into jail, and don't die. If I can manage to not do any of those 4 things, I'll be all right. I think alcohol has come a bit close at times.
You still like a glass of
Oh
wine,
yeah,
don't you?
I would love to have a glass of wine with you, Fred, but I've got to drive, so
Yeah, I know.
I better not. But yeah,
Oh,
there was lots of stuff in the part of the book that I wrote about my life before I left, my life in the religion. A lot of it good stuff, happy memories, but also a lot about the control and the whole mechanisms of how it all works and why it is like it is. And all of that I wrote, I think, will probably be interesting to some people, but I
It,
find it.
it would be interesting because I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, this is a film.
Don't be
No,
silly.
no, that's what I'm thinking. All what's happened to you, it's like in a film.
No, I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but
Well, no, what I mean is that it's filmable.
well, I don't think so. But
No,
that's only because it's happened to me, and that was my life. So you kind of think, well, that was just
well,
that
I
was
know a
then.
lot about your life, but it fascinates me, and I know most of
Yeah,
it.
but I'm wholly unable to see that because that
No,
was
you
just my
can't
life.
step back, can
No,
you?
no,
No.
no. And and a lot of things happened before I left. Well, and of course after I left, some things of which I'm not proud of. You and I mean, you can imagine being free as a bird.
I
You've
can
been
imagine it.
trapped in a cage all your life, and you've got all these rules,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, there's no limits. You can do whatever you want to do, and no one is going to stop you. Can you imagine being in that situation?
Yeah. Yeah. Wish for it.
But like I said, you know, and you're cautious at first, and then you're uh, curious. Curiosity killed the cat, and then you kind of just dip your toe in the water, and you think, well, actually, that was good fun. That was a great night. And then, of course, that becomes much once more. And then, if you're not careful, you find yourself in a situation where you're now doing things. Actually, yes, they were great fun, and we had some, we've had some amazing parties over the 13 years since I left. But there's
You can't
nothing
overindulge.
illegal, nothing illegal, Fred.
No, no.
Fred,
But you can over. No, and no, that comes in with the principle. You can overindulge, can't you?
I definitely
Yeah,
overindulged.
yeah, yeah. My life, I always underindulged.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh dear.
But it is a fantastic story. It really is.
Well, there's a lot more to it than what we've talked about tonight.
Oh, I know, I know. I mean, you only use a touch the surface of it,
Yeah.
really. Um, but yeah, if you could write about it, you could, but you'd have to write honestly about it.
I know.
You couldn't just leave things out.
I know, but to do a warts and all would be so shocking to the average reader that they.
Well,
Well, I told you, didn't I? That I actually paid after we made some money in 2020. I paid a ghostwriter from America.
yeah, you did.
And she wrote 4 chapters, and I remember saying to her, "Look, well, unless I include everything that has genuinely happened in my life, I don't think it's going to be interesting enough for people to want to buy." But and I said to her, the problem is that some of the stuff that's happened in my life is so shocking that I don't want people to know about it. Like, I'm not proud of these things. That was
Yeah, but
who I
I
was.
don't think you've done anything wrong. You've enjoyed
Well,
yourself.
you're a very open-minded person, Fred.
Yeah,
There's a
well,
lot.
most people are now.
Well, I think that yeah, maybe. Anyway, and she said like what? And I said, for instance, and I explained this part that I of it was just this one party that we had and it all went a bit crazy, and I explained this and obviously went into the detail of and she literally said to me over the phone, Stephen, you can't put that in your book. You can't. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but it actually did happen. So I'm not making it up.
I'm surprised that she said that.
Well, I think she was. I didn't realise that she was very religious herself.
Ah,
Nothing to do with the
no,
religion I was
no,
in, but she was very
no.
religious herself from that area of America that's very
I mean,
religious.
you
And
think of Mr. Average man who gets on a plane or a train or whatever with a book, your book, reading about your story. they're going to be fascinated with it. They're not going to be judgmental. You don't. I mean,
You don't know what
we've
I've
all
done.
got skeletons.
You don't know what I've done, Brett.
No, whatever it is, you upholded your integrity, etc. No, it's not going to be that bad. You
No,
might think it's going to be
I
bad.
suppose no, because like I said, it wasn't anything illegal. It was just, um, I guess, just going crazy.
Young man,
Being a bit wild. I guess.
yeah, yeah. Don't you think
I
that's
never
been
hurt
going on
anybody.
for
Never hurt anybody. No.
all these big bands, all these things that they do
Yeah,
now?
probably.
Yeah, and they write about it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only time to be ashamed about it is if you hurt somebody.
Oh no, I didn't know they
No,
were.
which you don't do.
I have to be careful what I say. I'm going to say too much.
Well, don't go down that road.
No, no, but yeah, people would never look at me the same again. They would, because they say they don't
Yeah, but
judge,
that's
but
good
they do judge though. How is that good?
because it's truth.
I would be.
You can't.
Oh, my, I don't know, my cousin up in Shrewsbury, Sam. I wouldn't want her to know. She'd be. Oh, she'd never look at me
I mean,
again.
that's a judgment you're making
I know.
for her.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was.
You don't know her properly, really. What she says, you might be thinking, "Whoa, this is good. Whoa, he did that."
No, she's my cousin.
So what?
Oh dear. But no, and other people that I really respect,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you cover things up, and I think a lot of biographers have been um, less than truthful. Famous biographers.
not necessarily about writing something that's not true, but leaving stuff out that was true, that did happen.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
By omission. Yeah. So yeah. Well, I put it in. I went. I've written some stuff.
Or maybe I'll put it in and change my name, do it under a pseudonym.
You could do it. Yeah, you could do that.
But no, I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm. I really don't think I'm ever gonna write the book.
Maybe not.
I just got to that block where I've written quite a lot, and then I got to this one point, and I just dropped it like a hot potato and never went back to it. I just it was almost like I was kind of like, oh, I don't want to go there. I'm not going there. I don't want to think about it. Don't want to write about it. Close book. And I never went back to it.
That's what happened to me on the first when I started writing the first one. I did about 130 pages. It was 131 pages. I wrote that, and I've been doing it for some time. And because I was brought up with Dr. Bernardo, who I was brought up with, they brought me up, and there was a magazine that come out every 3 months, I think it was, and one of them was somebody asking for articles and anything like that. So
to be written.
Pardon?
To be written. Articles to be written.
Yeah. Or if we got somebody that want to publish,
right?
They wanted to publish that. So I sent some chapters up,
right?
And about a month later, I got a reply off them. They said, "Yeah, we would love to publish it if you could finish the book." Like, I was frightened to death.
Really?
I was frightened to death, and I stopped writing. I stopped, and I ignored the letter. I'd be competent, I think I couldn't do that and all that. I'd already done something, But and then I wrote. I think you read a few of the things I did on the mini bio that I did on Facebook.
Yeah.
I sent some chapters up to this company.
Was that the one when you went to France?
Oh, there was that.
Yeah.
No,
that was brilliant. That was.
It's a mini bio.
The nights in something about
Four nights in France.
4 nights in France. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this was my story, all
Right.
right, but in a mini bio, I called it.
Right.
I did about 11 chapters in it, and I picked a few chapters out, and I sent it up to this publisher, um, and I didn't hear anything for a long while. And then when I did hear, they said yes, we would like to publish it. I'd already lost my sight, and I
No.
couldn't write anymore. I
No.
couldn't see to write, couldn't even think to write then. Yeah.
Could
So
you?
that's twice I had to,
Oh.
I couldn't fulfill a dream. But hey, there you are.
Could you voice to text?
I've just started doing that
Yeah.
now. Last message I sent you was
Yeah.
voice it, but it's very complicated for me.
Right.
Very complicated. Um, it's so difficult. My style of writing, when I used to write, so I did 2 or 3 thousand words or whatever. I would write, and I'd say, "Oh no, that bit's wrong there," and then I'd change it. Right, sweetie.
Hello.
Um, and I do that all the time. Keep good. So that when I got to the end of it, it's finished.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't do that now.
Yeah. Of course. Oh dear.
Did you get
No.
it done?
Did you win?
Yes, I had £22.
Oh, again you won.
Nice.
Come on then.
We could chat for hours about all this.
Oh, my
We've had a
love.
lovely evening though.
Oh,
I just want to thank you, Fred, for everything you've done for me. It's just
oh,
been amazing.
no, don't be silly. Don't be silly. I told you I would have done it
Baby,
anyway.
yeah.
Don't
Really
be
good.
silly.
Really good to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you. Nice to see you doing so well.
Oh, well, I don't think I'm doing well.
Oh, it really is.
I don't.
I
think I'm
talked
doing well.
about you to my friends. I do.
No, I'm not there yet, but
Yeah, but you're
I
still a
hope I'll-
legend.
I hope I'll get there one day.
You're a legend, Joanne.
Right, enough of that.